watch 'em all, gotta watch 'em all. Pokemon. What up, Randies, and welcome to the wonderful world of Pokemon, where every video will be Pokemon related. In today's installment, we're taking a look at those special Pokemon who make your nostalgia bone tick, the Kanto region starters. I personally grew up with the Johto starters, but like many was introduced to the mega franchise known as Pokemon through the anime series, and one of the many things I took away was how great the three starters were. Squirtle was cool, Bulbasaur was loyal, and Charmander was caring. But somewhere along the lines, the latter of these three took off and became one of Pokemon's big three, which is a term used to refer to Pikachu, Mewtwo, and of course, Charizard. Sure, Ash had a Charizard to reflect his video game counterpart chosen starter, but why was the trading card worth so much? And why did Charizard get all of the love, considering both Venusaur and Blastoise had their own mascot games? And back when I was a child, I swear there were just as many kids who chose Squirtle over Charizard. So why nearly 20 years later, is it the fire-flying type that gets all of the love? Not to mention a special spot in the black and white anime series and third movie, and 2 Mega Evolutions. But what if I told you that all of this can be traced to one decision, and that in a parallel universe somewhere right now, you'd be maining Blastoise in Smash 4 instead of that overrated lizard? By the way, that's the funniest joke in this episode. I mean, Charizard is a main, really? Don't believe me? Well, it's true. And once you're finished with this video, you'll learn all about the secret origins of Charizard's fiery popularity, and how Blastoise, water cannons and all, was left to stand in the rain. So with that perfect analogy out of the way, let's try to break this down into 3 specific categories: the games, the anime, and the card game. In 1996, Game Freak changed the RPG genre forever by offering not one, but 2 revolutionary games called Pocket Monster Red and Pocket Monster Green for the original Game Boy. Each game had its own unique set of Pokemon that would need to be traded in order to catch them all. Eventually, these games were localized for Western audiences, but instead of Green version, we got Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, which featured updated sprites and bug fixes based on Japanese Blue version. These games actually had a slow start, but once news of a secret 151st Pokemon emerged, the games began to sell like a big nugget, and spun off into the empire we love today. And this leads us to Red vs. Blue, and Charizard's popularity in general. You would likely assume that due to the anime and the card game, that this propelled the version with Charizard on the box ahead of the one with Blastoise, but you'd be dead wrong. In fact, Blue version outsold its partner in Red by almost 200,000 copies by the end of its lengthy run. So Charizard's popularity has nothing to do with being a cover mascot. And as we all know, the story in the original Pokemon games is predominantly up to the individual player, so Charizard has no specific impact on those games. With all of this evidence, we can be certain that in North America, there is fundamentally no way that Charizard's reign had anything to do with the video games. So let's delve into our next section, the card game, where it's a bit of a different story. So after the original game's sleeper success in Japan, a card game was released in late 1996. And yeah, I can't expand on this one. Charizard was the equivalent to crack on every playground in the late 1990s, and having one in your deck essentially made you Tony Montana. I mean, he wasn't even the best card for strategy purposes, but with that 120 HP and that devastating 100-point Fire Spin attack, he was one of the best. And barring Chansey, could virtually take down any card in one hit. But more important than Charizard's stats was the card's rarity. It seemed impossible to find one in a pack, no matter how many you opened. Don't get me wrong, Blastoise and Venusaur had great cards as well, and once again in terms of playstyles, a well-utilized Venusaur or Blastoise could beat someone with the Charizard. But to put it bluntly, Charizard was the most sought-after card in the game, and it stayed that way for many years. But could a card game that quickly died out really be responsible for such a wide margin in popularity? I mean, it had to have helped, but a rare card alone couldn't be responsible for all of Charizard's growth in fans' hearts, could it? Well, let's delve into our last section and see if we can complete this puzzle. So, I briefly mentioned the anime in the opening, but to get a little more extensive, Ash used 5 main Pokémon throughout his earliest adventure. These were Pikachu, Pidgeotto, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charizard. Each Pokémon had its own role on the team, with Pikachu being the main attacker, Pidgeotto being used as surveillance or transportation, Bulbasaur using his vines to help the team out of sticky situations, Squirtle being used to surf or putting out Team Rocket's fires, and finally, Charizard. Well, Charizard was just sort of an a-hole. His role within the anime was to teach potential trainers about the obedience system and how powerful Pokémon would not obey players without enough experience. But eventually, despite this, Charizard grew into both Ash's most powerful Pokémon as well as his means of transportation as the two grew closer. This effectively allowed Charizard to fit 3 key roles on the team and made him stand out as Ash's all-around best Pokémon. He was funny, powerful, and useful, and as each episode passed, he only got closer to Ash, and to us kids watching at home. So yeah, it would appear that although he started as just another random Pokemon, by the end of the first anime series, he was easily Ash's most versatile, and this, coupled with the rare trading card, is likely a big reason for why he's so popular today. So, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and wait, that can't be it. I clearly missed something, and I promised Blastoise a comeback, so let's look at that timeline again. The games are released in Japan in February 1996. Then, sometime that fall, the card game came out, and Charizard became the Holy Grail. Not too long after that, in early 1997, the anime debuted, and a few months after that, Charizard was written to be Ash's most appealing Pokemon, which paved the way for his universal popularity. And that makes sense. The popularity of the card likely had an effect on his expanded role in the anime, but still, why Charizard? We already established that blue version outsold red, so why wouldn't they make Blastoise the rarer card, and therefore lead to Squirtle's evolving instead of Charmander? Think about it, unlike Venusaur, Blastoise could have fulfilled all of the pivotal roles that Charizard eventually took over throughout the anime's run. He could have surfed for travel, which would have been even more practical, especially during the Orange Islands arc. He would have been Ash's most powerful Pokemon, he could have been just as big a pain in the butt, and overall it would have made more sense based on the North American sales data. So why didn't Blastoise become a member of the Big Three instead of Charizard? Why wasn't it Blastoise who got 2 Megas and saved the day in Pokemon 3? How could this weird anomaly happen? And did Blastoise get ripped off? Well, it's actually simple, and you guys are gonna love this. Blastoise should have been the popular one, not Charizard, but it all came down to one bad decision on Game Freak's part. When they decided which 2 mascots to go with for the initial Japanese release, Blastoise never originally even got a chance. That's right, the reason Charizard became so popular is because Game Freak chose green instead of blue for the original series of games. We've all heard the jokes. Everyone picked Charizard or Squirtle, and Bulbasaur always sat on Professor Oak's desk unloved. But that same effect holds true when parents actually choose the games they buy for their kids. It comes down to many factors, but a lot of the time the mascot and color itself play a bigger role than the narrative. So although story-wise red may be the protagonist and blue may be the rival, this doesn't mean that red is the more popular version. In fact, silver version, with the help of Pokemon 2000, actually outsold gold by about 100,000 copies, despite the narrative clearly making silver the rival and gold or Ethan being the protagonist. My point is that if a parent had to choose Ho-Oh or Lugia, most would choose Lugia because he looks more appealing and was in a movie. If you had to choose Blastoise or Charizard for a young boy in the 1990s, a parent likely would have picked Blastoise, or the blue color more associated with the concept of being male. And they did, as the fact that blue still outsold red in North America, despite being sold in parallel with the anime and card games here, speaks volumes. But finally it comes down to one decision. Imagine between the months of February and September of 1996 Japan, you hear that this brand new Pokemon game is sweeping the nation, each week gaining momentum. So with no anime or card game in place yet, you just pick the mascot that you think will appeal to your son, the overall primary demographic for this series of games. Do you choose the fire-breathing dragon, a very powerful looking creature? Or do you choose the blue frog dinosaur with a pink flower on its back? Now, I have no proof on which version sold more units, as Nintendo never disclosed the specific data per game in its homeland, but I'd wager that clueless Japanese mothers and fathers at that time went into stores and they picked red over green enough that just became the definitive selling Pokemon game. And so when the property blew up and a card game and anime series was announced, the studios and marketing teams likely asked Game Freak which Pokemon they felt had the most potential as a mascot, based on the two versions released so far. And with only data on Charizard and Venusaur to draw from, they bypassed Blastoise entirely, and paved the way for Charizard to overtake his Poke peers and become the most popular starter ever. And all because they went with red and green instead of red and blue. Now, without that crucial sales data on the individual versions, I can't 100% verify this speculation. But so long as that data is exactly how I assume, then this hypothesis is sound, and effectively proves once and for all that Blastoise should have been the face of Pokemon Charizard is today. But one simple marketing decision messed it all up for the true Kanto starter. So although Venusaur may be my personal favorite design and Charizard may be the most popular, always remember that it should have been Blastoise, not Charizard, that set the world on fire. Or is that water? Hey, thanks for watching the third video of Pokémon, and make sure you share it if you got any enjoyment out of it at all. We love to hear from you, so make sure you tweet us at random10s with some of your theories on this idea, or just leave a comment below on who your favorite Kanto starter is. We'll have our final review of Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue for you next Saturday morning, so stay tuned for that. And as I always say, happy hunting, baby rhinos.